And welcome back to another daily devotion. I'm Pastor Roy here at Woodlawn Christian Church in Lake City, Iowa, and this devotion is for Tuesday, January 31 of 2023. We have made it to the last day in January. Hallelujah. I'm always happy to get January past us. It seems like, to me anyway, psychologically, the winter is just a little more tolerable after we get through January. But it's going to be a cold week this last week of January, first week of February here. So we do need your prayers to endure. But we are working our way through the book of Romans currently, and we have made it to chapter 14 today. And we're going to split this section into two or maybe three. This section is do not judge another. But I decided to break it up and keep these devotions a little shorter here at the beginning of the week here. So let's look at verses 1 to 4 in chapter 14 of Romans. As for the man who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not for disputes over opinions. One believes he may eat anything, while the weak man eats only vegetables. Let not him who eats despise him who abstains, and let not him who abstains pass judgment on him who eats, for God has welcomed him. Who are you to pass judgment on the servant of another? It is before his own master that he stands or falls, and he will be held, for the master is able to make him stand. All right. In the Roman church, in the early church, you had people from different walks of life. You had the Jewish Christians, you had the Gentile Christians, and even amongst the Gentiles, you had Gentiles, that's all-encompassing word, but you had all these different cultures and all these different beliefs that they're brought into, especially about diets. Dietary traditions are quite different across the world, and that was no different in Paul's time. And the Jews, of course, what was kosher, and they didn't eat what was not kosher. And so even though in Acts we should have learned from Acts that Jesus proclaimed all things to be acceptable, all things clean as far as food, some held to those dietary laws. And Paul's point here is let's not beat each other up over these things. And maybe to some that shows a lack of faith, but don't beat on those that are weak in faith. And so he's, in a little bit of a way, he's kind of pointing out that they need to be stronger in their faith, and then they wouldn't have a problem. But he's, without saying that brutally, or bluntly, I guess is the way we should say that. He seems to be inferring to that. As for the man who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not for disputes over opinions. Don't get into silly squabbles, for crying out loud. Again, in those days, there was a lot of dietary things that could cause division. Plus, the fact that for the Gentiles, a lot of the meat was sacrificed to idols. And then once that was done, you could buy some of that in the marketplace. And for those that knew what the point was and had previously believed in those gods with the little g, there was a problem with consuming that meat. That to them there's still that, though they should know better. And Paul's getting back that the God of the little g is no God at all. He's non-existent. God with the capital G, Lord with a capital L. That our past caused a problem there. There's a little bit of a psychological issue for some of them. Now, I don't think that all of them had that problem or that issue of eating meat sacrificed to idols. But for some, that was a problem apparently. And what Paul's saying is, don't beat them up over that. Don't bring them in just to dispute with them over those opinions or other types of opinions. My mentor, Bob Mulby, always said that the number one thing that breaks up a church is the song, the music for worship, and the second biggest thing to break up a church is the color of the new carpet for the sanctuary. It could be the new countertop for the kitchen. It could be the new whatever. I've seen people get into some of the most insane knockdown, drag-out fights over some of the most inane things, things that had nothing to do with God, and had all to do with our egos and our interpretation of what the sanctuary should look like, or what kind of music we play, or what the facility should look like, or all of those things. Granted, those things are important to us, but they're not the important part. They may be of some, but we don't get into battles over those things. We don't drive someone else away from the faith. We don't become a stumbling block that someone would leave the faith because of our actions, because we were being our whatever we want to call it, ego, was getting in the way of somebody else. Don't let your ego ever get in the way of somebody else's salvation. Leave it up to God. God will uphold them. It says here in verse 4, he will upheld. Excuse me, and he will be upheld, for the master is able to make him stand. All right, God will get him there. All right, so that's where I'm going to leave it at for today. We'll pick up there at verse 5, talk a little more about this. It's all kind of the same thought, but I decided to break it in two. All right, have a blessed day, and please, please, please be a blessing to someone today. Tell them about Jesus. Be kind to them, though, too, while you're doing it. All right, God bless.